Welcome to the Productivity Pro podcast. I'm your host, Waneka, here to help you unlock your potential, maximize your time, and take intentional steps towards your best self. Whether you're a busy professional, an entrepreneur, or someone striving to achieve more balance and fulfillment, this podcast is your guide to actionable insights and inspiring conversations. New episode drops on the first and last Tuesdays of each month, so stay tuned and let's make productivity personal. Good morning and welcome to the Productivity Pro podcast. I am your host, Waneka. I am joined with Paul today. He's going to be my guest. He's a jack of many trades when it comes to human connection. And I'm actually fortunate he's able to come back again because the original recording date would have fallen in between Valentine's weekend, which would have been perfect. But we can still have this conversation because it's very much needed. So let's get started. How are you doing today, Paul?
It's great. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful time of year here in Tucson, Arizona. This is where people who come from the north, where there's lots of snow, enjoy being here instead of being in the north with lots of snow.
This is true. So I wanted to ask, your career is marriage counseling, education, authorship. You have a book. So I just want to ask, what initially drew you to those fields? And how do you kind of intersect all of these in your daily work? How do you do that?
Well, about 30 years ago, a bit more at this time, I began as a domestic violence counselor. I had a brand new degree from the University of Virginia in counseling education. I looked around for where I could serve. And at that time, and probably even to this day, the victims were made responsible for pressing charges, which left them in a very awkward, vulnerable position. So I chose to create classes for men who perpetrate domestic violence and abuse. And for 2 years, I led courses in 2 different cities for the domestic violence intervention program of Central Virginia. And after a while, I thought, well, wouldn't it be better if I prevented it rather than treated it after the damage is done? And that seemed to be a more productive use of my time and my talents. And so I started, and I also, along the way, chose to become a chaplain. Actually, one of the perpetrators I treated, he was working 100-hour weeks, lots of equipment. He was a construction person. And it turns out that his spouse wanted to have him home rather than him working 100-hour weeks. And I began to make a difference when I said, go to church together. And when that happened, their relationship started to heal. And so that inspired me. Well, when we brought God and spirit into the equation, things started to move. And then I became a professional chaplain, hospice chaplain, hospital chaplain. And along the way, I've begun the inquiry. What would, if present, would make the difference? I remember a moment in the domestic violence abusers class when I said to them, listen, this isn't the DV class. This is the best relationship on the planet class. And that moment, their attention flipped from having to be there to getting to be there. This class is an opportunity not to be punished for what you did, but actually for creating a relationship that will work for you from the now on. And that started the journey. And over the 30 years, I've been asking myself, what if present would make the difference? And what you'll hear today is a lot of the fruit of the harvest of what I've gathered in the past 30 years.
I always on the podcast, I always tell my listeners, if you have any type of goals that will see you in the future, career goals, I always like to bring guests that started somewhere and you kind of see how they continue to move along in their career or any type of work they're doing. Because sometimes people think if I set a goal, I have to meet it tonight or in a year. And sometimes things take time. So I always love when people have started out with an idea of what they want to do and then they kind of like pivot to something else along those lines. And then you're pivoting even more to where you're now doing the authorship realm, which is amazing. So I have this question for you as we wait for this to come back on. Counseling and education both require a great deal of emotional and mental energy. How do you maintain productivity while balancing the demands of both professions?
Well, a way of looking at it would be that if you bring your marriage to work, you're going to lose productivity and performance?
Mm.
The answer would be have a healthy platform of your life. There are a number of skills, insights, and best practices that feed your relationship. Gary Chapman, in his book, The 5 Love Languages, please get a copy and start reading it aloud together, says keep your love tank full. If you arrive at work or arrive home from work full of energy and life, then you don't have to worry about the other stuff. Feed your life, feed your marriage, and the rest will take care of itself. One of my intents is that to bring the same skills, which we'll talk about shortly, to the workplace. Communication with mutual honor and respect. Going to work as an opportunity rather than as an obligation.
Was this conversation you had with me over the past weekend about the idea of get to versus I have to? And it was revolving around the things I had to get done to get my internet working and things like that. And you kind of spoke on that. And I, even each morning now, I find myself like, if I look at my schedule of what I have to teach, I'm like, okay, I have to get this done to get this. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I get to teach like this. I get to interact with students. I get to meet new students. And that has really helped me. You know, I've seen my idea of getting up early, being productive because I like getting up super early, doing my mindfulness practice, getting my schedules ready. And now it's no longer, wow, I have to wake up and do those things. I'm like, oh, I get to wake up and do those things.
It seems to me that most of us live a have to, need to, should, up to, and must life. I have to go to work, need to get going. I have to get up and shave and get dressed so I can get out the door because I have to. This is a common theme throughout our society. And I point out, as I did earlier, that there's a hidden or else. There's like a scary bit. I have to go shopping or else. We have to get going or else we'll be late. We have to go to work or else. That or else costs us life because we're no longer in charge of our life. We're responding to life with obligation and circumstances. We are not free. It's really, you're not free when you have a have to, need to, should, ought to, and must life. And the easiest tweak I've come up with so far is change one vowel, O, for another vowel, E, and in a nanosecond, you go from a got to life to a get to life.
Nice.
Get to life is exciting. It's life of opportunity and possibility and choice. You can change your mind just because you changed your mind. So if you have to go to work, 10% of you is on a beach somewhere fishing. So you're not really completely at work. Productivity, performance, shrink. If you have to, XYZ, it costs you life. So from now on, people who are listening to this podcast, if you hear yourself saying, well, I have to, I say, have to, I get to. Couples come to me because they have to. They come back because they get to.
Nice.
Marriage is an opportunity. Think of a wedding. Piece of cake, a license, a ring, and a party. Hey, marriage, wedding. And then slowly we sink into the have to, need to, should, ought to, and must life or else. And which is easier, to have to go shopping or get to go shopping? Have to get ready, get to get ready. Have to clean the kitchen counters, get to clean the kitchen counters. It's really that simple.
I always loved how productivity is tied in our mindset, and it's always easier when we understand that we're able to even plan things because we woke up, right? I always said to myself, I'm going to do this podcast with Paul, and I could have been thinking of all the lists of things that could have been different in my life. We always do that. I could have done this. I could have, and then I'm like, what if I didn't even wake up? This is, let's put that in perspective. What if this didn't even, so the fact that now I get to do this with you because I get to have another opportunity, another day, has really shifted my mindset of what it means to be actually productive versus productivity is this like, let's be busy and planning and career, everything. And then we forget that, okay, what happens when you don't even have the next day? What was the point of all that? So I really love that. But I want to ask you this, in your experience as a marriage counselor, what are some of the biggest productivity killers in relationship? And how would you advise couples to overcome that?
Well, if we take a look, we'll find that most people react. I say something to my spouse, she reacts. She says something to me, on the moment I react. And reacting is certainly appropriate when the light turns red. I really want you to stop. I don't want you to think about it because then you'll get hurt. So first challenge is to go from reacting to responding. And we do that by starting our sentences with yes, and an and. When you say yes, you've swapped from reacting and you've set yourself up for responding, which is an intelligence act. 2, we've established a connection. Yes. 3, you know that I have heard you. With these 3 pieces in place, we are now set up for the and. And let's take some time and talk about this. And let's set a date for us to meet. A session. You don't have to be in the rabbit hole longer than it takes to say, and you want to talk about let's say you want to talk about finances, which is a scary topic for many of us. So you could say, let's talk about our finances. Or you could say, yes, let's take some time to discuss our finances. A sentence with yes and an and is far stronger than the same sentence without. If you're a real estate agent and someone wants a $100,000 house in $1 million neighborhood, you know that's not workable. But you don't say that. You say, yes, let's look at all the numbers and you'll decide what's the best choice for you. Same thing, selling cars. All sales, basically, you're a yes to their dreams. You're a yes to whatever they want. It could be a patient, a client, customer, your spouse, your teenager. You know, parents of teenagers often confronted with, I want this really expensive thingy. And you could react with like, no. Or you could say, yes, I'm listening. And you get to honor and respect your own teenage child. And then you'll listen to them and you'll get the evidence, the information you need to respond appropriately as a parent to anybody. Even you go to the hardware store and you say, I'm looking for, left-handed wrench. And they say, no, and I have a right-handed wrench. We'll train ourselves within the contents of our lives to respond with yes, but the world is full of no's. And our response is, and I'd like you to do this for me. They say, no, I can't do that. And the and connects us. No and a but divides us. It's really nothing more complicated than 3-letter word. And I want to go to Chinese food tonight. I'm not sure I'm interested in that. And it's magical. A&D is a connector. That's what it does. It connects you and me. And when we feed ourselves, our lives, our marriages, our communities, our workplace relationships with, and we have collaboration. And is a key to collaboration. Those and buts are a key for disputation, which is a total waste of time. It was a long answer to a short question, but and it's a magic. It's a can opener of communication. Yes,
but very necessary response, because I think of all the times where I'm not adverse to conflict, but I'm very like calm and very like objective in how things should be done. So I don't tend to I want to fight something to just prove I can fight it. But I also think of moments where I could have saved myself time and also the other person time by simply just saying, you know what? Okay, and what else can we do here?
Perfect.
Versus, but I kind of think let's think about this. Now you're objecting to something that maybe that person or myself took time to really think about it. Like maybe it doesn't resonate to you the way it felt for that person, but now you shut down maybe what could have been nights of processing and, getting up the courage to have this conversation, and it gets shut down very quickly. So I definitely love this conversation, and you did not take a long time. I'm glad you explained it fully, because I will say to my listeners, respond rather than react.
Perfect. But one other gift is that when people want to be angry around you or at you, you're a terrible person, someone says. Now you could defend and you could explain, which is a waste of time because they are not listening. Why bother? So they say, you're the worst person I've ever met. How can you possibly be that way? And you go, yes, tell me more. They can be really angry. I'm really angry.
To wait for it to connect. And I do know why I'm having some connection issue is because this whole shared network of my phone with my computer, when it glitches, it kind of freezes the other end. So I figured it out. So now instead of it freezes and I'm frustrated, I'm like, and what can I do differently?
Exactly. If someone really they're really angry at you for whatever reason, you go, yes. They go, I'm listening. No. You're really a bad example of how we don't want this person working in our business. And you go, yes, let's talk about that. I'm interested in hearing your point of view, which is a very inviting, I'm ready to listen, which is a gift all by itself. So it's a go-to place when people are angry and upset. It won't work every single time, but after about 3 yeses, they kind of stop. Yes, opens up lines of communication.
So let me pivot a little bit, because your way of counseling and just me hearing your conversation, you have a very educator's point of view in terms of like giving people feedback, right? And so I know this goes with the fact that you were also an educator. So what lessons from the classroom kind of influence the way you counsel marriage couples or people, and also in your writing? Like, do you think that some of those experiences translate to how you have those conversations with couples?
It's amazingly uncomplicated. It's as simple as yeses and ands and the seems. I didn't mention that one yet because you and I, we tend to speak declaratively. And it sounds to you that I'm speaking the truth. It may be an opinion, it may be a feeling, it may be an observation, but it sounds to my listener, to the listeners to this podcast, that I'm speaking from the truth. Well, that gets us into trouble because if what I say doesn't match what you believe, intend, or remember, we will stop listening, we will stop communicating, if we were, and we'll begin to arguing about whose truth is truer, whose reality is most real, and who's right and who's wrong. So that breaks us down. And for that, we need seems, because you are always evaluating the validity of what you hear me say. And if I'm speaking truthfully, then we lose something. If we use the word seems, it helps us bypass the truth. And so a seems will get us a discussion, where truth will put us into an argument. So between yes and seems, we maintain mutual honor and respect. Seems.
I like.
So if someone says something, an idea that you don't particularly agree with, you go, it seems to me there may be other ways of looking at this challenge.
Ah,
Seems opens up connection and discussion, where truths will shut us down. We want to avoid the word but. I understand your point of view, says I, and then you go, but here's my point of view. Your point of view completely disappeared. We want to use, and this is my point of view. I understand where you're coming from. I understand the approach you're proposing for our enterprise. And I have some other thoughts to add. Can we do that?
I like that.
Rising inflection is another great tool because it's inviting.
I like that.
So we have yes, ands, and seems, and a little bit of a sidebar. My book, which is formatted as recipes, not chapters, it literally instructs you how to take a time out. Yes, ands, and seems, how to listen, personality types. It's easily translatable into the world of school curricula. I'd like to increase the performance of teenage relationships. And it's a tragedy when our teenagers feel obligated to say yes when they really want to say no. They're afraid of breaking the connection. They want to be accepted. They want to be popular. They want to belong. Their bodies are trying to say, get pregnant. Sorry, we have to say that because it's really there.
This is true.
And their best friend comes up with a teenage idea, and they know it's not good for them, or even a good idea. But instead of being afraid to say no, they can say, I'm not sure I'd like to do that. And they will be safer. I guarantee you, the yes preserves the nature of their relationship, friendship, whatever, and the and lets them steer. So rather than being stuck with the yes they don't really mean, but they're afraid to say no, we want our teenagers to say, yes, let's look at that together and see if it's really a good idea. Yes for teenagers. Yes for children. Yes for parents. I mean, you're going to ask a number of questions, but the answer is going to be yes, it seems. Maybe sound boring, but it opens up life in the classroom. I coached some of the teachers of the Tucson United School District a couple of years back. And now when Joey comes to the Mrs. Jones, the dog ate my homework, says the young child. Now the teacher says, yes. And by when will I see your assignment? We're teaching them integrity. There's a whole lot of sub thing going on. Don't accept excuses. You accept promises and word.
I like that. Yes.
Yes.
And when will I see? I like that. You're teaching me, as someone who's also an educator, ways to navigate trust in my classroom, which you always think you've mastered. Like, no one masters that, right? Especially when it's other people's children. But I just feel like that's going to be such a great tool to not only use, but also share with my team for next year as to what that would feel like to give trust to a student who otherwise is going to be like, oh, this teacher is going to get upset.
Listen, children, we have a legacy of a lot of no's.
This is true.
And a lot of you's. You sit down and eat your dinner. You apologize. You clean your room. You go do your homework. You turn off the TV. As a legacy of childhood, we get very sensitive to hearing the word you. It's in there. So when I speak youishly to you, I lose some of your listening. So we want to avoid the word you. So I teach couples to say one of us. Seems to me that one of us, and we've avoided the minefield of distraction. I also teach how do we maintain a high quality listening anywhere? Because when we use words like always and every and never and only, we lose listening, because then we turn on their truth app and they're evaluating whether it really is always, every, never, and only. And for that, we need the word tends to. Yes, and seems to me that as an organization, we've kept the vast majority of the people's listening. We don't turn on their truth apps. Anything that follows yes, and it seems to me we as an organization have tended to. That opens the door to collaboration. Everybody is fully listening. By the way, when you get your team together, invite me and I'll teach you this very same stuff.
We'll definitely bring it up to the admin for next year.
Yeah, I hear that Amazon warehouses have some employment stress. There are 6 of them here in Tucson, and I would be honored to be invited into the Amazon warehouse employee world and teach them. Yes, and tends to. Their relationships at home will improve and their relationships at work will improve. The collaboration at work will improve. And it's not complicated. Yes, and tends to, got to, and yeah, one of us.
Now, again, it's not complicated. It's just, and this is a conversation for a different podcast. It's something called ego, which majority of all of us have, and some more than others. And it prevents people from saying, this will work, let me just use it. But it's more of like, no, because how dare I admit something will work differently? So we can always have that conversation. But I mean, what are your quick thoughts about that?
That points to ego is a defense mechanism.
I agree.
So in the course of my work with couples, we get to distinguish, how did I adapt to the family and the community I was raised in? As 5-year-olds, we don't have a high degree of cognitive, intellectual, logical thought, but we don't have any abstract thought to mention until about 6th grade. So 5-year-olds and people in previous marriages, they've learned to cope. And one of the coping strategies is to be, arrogant, to have this shield of, I know better than you.
This is true.
Right? So that often named ego. Ego is a symptom. It's a symptom. And when we know that ego is a symptom, we can then look, where did you pick this up? Because you weren't born that way, right? For me personally, I'm 5.5 years old. Our family had moved from one part of New York City to another. I spent 2 months in the kindergarten in the Bronx. Now I was in Queens, borough of Queens, New York City. And there in November, my mother walked me to PS 89. I walk into the PS 89. I sit down in the auditorium, and then she walks away. And at that moment, 5 years old, remember, no one cares which can evolve into, it's hard to do things if people don't care. Why bother becomes part of a theme of a young person's life. Another person was raised with very few positive speaking. Her father never said he loved her ever. And so by the time she became an adult, she lives a life given by not good enough. She's late, not good enough. Feedback from her boss, not good enough. Argument with her spouse, not good enough. So she wakes up ready to be not good enough. And she goes to sleep ready to be good enough. So once we can distinguish these distortions left over by very immature intelligence that have our name on it, we can overwrite some old code. Because imagine having a meeting with someone who one person feels they're not good enough, another person's expecting cheating, the other person's convinced that no one cares what they want, that they don't matter. Now try to imagine a meeting like that. 5 people are on the table, each with these littlest distortions left over from childhood. And it shows up as ego and obstinance and inability to listen. Because we're basically living a life given by a young child. So we can get to look at that too in our work together, because why should not good enough have to be collaborate with someone who knows they don't matter? Can you get it? I have to laugh at some point. It's just completely absurd. And then people marry each other. When I say I do, one person's not good enough, the other person is expecting cheating. Part of my work with organizations and with individuals to understand that there's parts of your life that you're not free, that you're locked out of flexibility, because that's how you needed that stubbornness to get through childhood or your previous marriage, which was abusive. We have to upgrade a lot of our communication relationship skills. And we haven't even mentioned personality types yet, but maybe that'll be one of your next questions. That's also,
you know what? I feel like that can lead into the whole idea of like the negative challenges of emotions. How you talk about personality type, and of course, that's a discussion that I definitely want you back several times on the podcast. But how do you think that plays into that? And do you think that there's some personalities that are predisposed to be more productive with their life, and then some, it just seems like no matter what happens, you give them all the tools, it's just not gonna hit the way they hope?
That's a great question. One of the distinctions you'll find out from your going to 16personalities.com, please take notes, take the quiz, and you find out that one of you approaches life analytically, scientifically, like Sheldon in Big Bang Theory, or Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. Those of us who are old enough remember My Fair Lady, Audrey Hepburn, Rex Harrison. There are people who are very planful, and you want these people in your organization. They are not happy with incompletes. They don't tolerate fuzzy. I've learned not to talk to my spouse. I'll handle it soon, because when I do that, she knows that she has to do it herself to make sure it happens. Some of the most productive people are the judge or letter J in the Myers-Briggs world. They are very organized, and if they're a sensor, they pay attention to details, and you want them to be your chief operating officer. That's a recipe for COO. They handle it, handle it, handle it, handle it. And they keep track of what they've handled, and they make notes. So someone who's a letter S and a letter J, just forget it, would be highly productive in an organization. And when you plan your teams, this is important. You want to have a sensor judger because you know they'll keep track of all the details, and you can ask them questions, they'll give you high-quality answers. But you also want someone like me who is really into imagination, speculation, investigation. So you'd want me to be your advisor, the source of new and interesting ideas for our team. But you wouldn't want a team of me. It would be a struggle to get things done. It would be frustrating for the people around us because I'm out of sight, out of mind, and it messes up marriages because one person expects things to be done. They need the information to anticipate the experience, and their spouse is like, oh yeah, we did talk about that. Sorry. And so there are structures, there are scaffolds that we can build into our relationships at work and at home that leaves our more planful partners satisfied and confident. They are not very happy with uncertainty. In fact, they are rather upset with uncertainty. I have a fairly good appetite for uncertainty. So between me and my spouse, who is the judger in our family, we have a very creative, loving life. So when you assemble a team, we want to look at the personalities involved. You want someone who's really good with people. That's an extrovert. You want someone who's really good with thinking and investigating and coming up with great ideas and initiatives. That's an intuitive. You want someone who can have rapport with their customers. If you're a release agent, you want to have a feeler. If you're a veterinarian, you want to be a feeler. And if you want to have a high degree of reliability, evidence-based production, you want to judge it.
I mean, I feel like that. I would love you to come back to the podcast episode just to really have that conversation, because sometimes my heart breaks for people who it seems like there's certain things either I cannot hit, I could get everything else. And the same with some people, you talk to them, they can hit everything that will make them extraordinary. And it just seems like there's an aspect that makes them feel like I'm not hitting this idea of being productive. And I think it falls in line with what really is going on internally, like what, not just, everyone, it's trauma, it must be this, but I mean, as educators, we know we can teach students with the resources and equip them with tools to learn differently. And that supersedes anything that they had to go through, right? Language barrier, we teach them some type of English learning tools, and then they're able to do.
Don't get me started.
I know, this will open up a whole, I get it, trust me.
An American marries a mainland Chinese woman.
Okay.
Actually, he is from Canada, and she doesn't like the idea of apology. Why is that? Because her parents went to the re-education camps in the Cultural Revolution of the Mao Zedong. And in that society, if you have something to apologize, you write it up and put it on a public bulletin board. And he, Canadian source, apparently Canadians really like apologies more than even Americans do. So he's waiting for an apology. She goes, oh, I know what that's like. I don't put my life up on a public bulletin board. And once he understood, with the guidance of myself as coach, that apology is for us, not against you. That's just one of many stories. When cross-cultural is just, if you're one more, I'll steal a little more time. They get married by arranged marriage in India. 1 month later, they moved to the United States. Their parents were the dominant leaders in their families, are still back in India. So you have an American couple who never knew each other before they got married, but they get married and they have 2 children, 18, 12 years old. But they're raising American children born of Indian parents who are still heavily influenced by their own parents in another country. Can you see all the room for mischief right there?
Yes, yes. Like I said, that's a conversation for, trust me, a lived experience. A
Another reason
lived
I have lots of
experience.
stories of the cross-cultural challenges in marriages. It's really quite different.
It is. It's question because you're a busy man, and I want to kind of wrap up by saying, if with all that we're saying, and of course, Paul doesn't know this yet, but he's gonna keep coming back to the podcast.
Please,
And Amazon, please take his word for it, because that company needs a little bit mashing together. There's just a lot that goes on. But I want to ask if you can leave my listeners with one key takeaway about how to be more productive in their relationship, their work, their personal life. You've kind of touched on it severally throughout the podcast, but if you can just tell, hey, if you listen to nothing else we said today, what is the one key takeaway for them to be more productive in those areas of their lives?
of course, one question, many answers. First, if you were 20 years old today, what would you wanted to know? Love languages, personality types. If I'd known then what I knew now, my life would be radically different. And if you haven't had parents of children who are in their 20s, teenagers, have them investigate their personality types. Because if a thinker falls in love with a feeler, you get to know that. So that's one answer. 2 is my book, Marriage and Communication, Recipes for Life. If you're a self-motivated learner, pick a recipe, follow the directions, get your cake. Only the cake is your life. Also on Amazon, Marriage and Communication, Recipes for Life. 2, or maybe up to 3, learn yes, ands, and seems, and get to have a great time enjoying your life. Get to love your children, get to love your spouses, get to have rich, nourishing environments in your workplace, with your friendships, with your mother-in-law. Don't start me. I'll go. Another conversation for another time.
Hey, that's why I know you're definitely, you're going to be a guest upon guests keep coming back.
And
You have so much
immediate
insight.
experience. Here I am in Tucson by Zoom or in person. In 5 sessions, I promise you will make it to your 50th wedding anniversary.
Hey, my
Once I
marriage
guarantee
friend.
I'll live that long. It's a 50-year promise. Spend 5 sessions or 90 minutes with me, and we can rock any relationship. Or you will know why not. Clarity is involved here. After working with me, you say, we raised our kids. We're different people. Let's break up. Either way, you'll have a relationship, or you know why you don't have a relationship. So you can find me at marriageandcommunication.com. And a new special is coming out this coming week is a compatibility checkup. Yeah. For $99, you'll be able to spend an hour and a half learning everything you need to know about yourself and about your partner that gives you a chance at a relationship that will last for the rest of your lives. Valentine's Day every day.
Valentine's Day every day. So my married listeners or those in relationships, perfect. And I would definitely link all those on the show notes for the podcast.
Thank you.
How you can reach out to Paul, how you can continue this conversation with him outside of this podcast episode. Definitely, I'm a person now and I'm very intentional. For me to have someone give them their time to have this conversation just tells me the grade of knowledge I know they have, and just the insight is going to move mountains for some people's lives. So just, you never know. Now, I'm going to leave with this because I always ask my guest, what any quote or phrase, anything that you live by. You know how people say, make it a great day. What is that for you that gets you going? If not for the day, for, just, I guess anything you need really. So we're talking about a phrase or a quote that just motivates you to be your best self.
Well, if I was making up the code, it'd be like, get to be alive. If you notice anything that sucks energy from your life, you get to look at that as an opportunity. This depression, some of it's chemical and genetic. I get it. But depression is very amenable to get to life. If you find any area of life where you're in breakdown, you get to look at it, get the support you need for the life you were born to live.
Is a great closer. And with that, I appreciate you joining me on the podcast for the second time. And just being very patient and just being very kind to share your knowledge. Again, my friends and listeners, you can catch him on wherever he's listed. I'll put it on the show note. I'll tag him so you can know how to directly go to him and seek his advice. And it's such an honor to have you on the podcast. And I thank you.
I get up every day to do this. People call me 2:00 in the morning. I'll answer the phone.
Nice.
I'm a yes to life. And I live that as a yes to life. Occasionally I get caught up in the no, and I know how to proceed from then on. And so we've been married for 25 years. We haven't ever had a knockdown, drag down argument. Ever. No screaming matches. Ever. And this is how you do it. I'd be honored to coach, be a temporary member of your life as we learn the skills, the insights, best practices for extraordinary performance, productivity in marriage, at work, and in home. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure was all mine. All right, my friends, you can listen to this podcast episode on Spotify or Amazon Music or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, Paul, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you.